Okay, so number
Yeah.
one, I have no problems going into history. If you want to ignore theology, we can. If you want to talk about truth, we can. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we nailed on, since it's like Christian nationalism is good, I guess is like the positive statement within this like dynamic. And you're right, it is a status quo versus the non-status quo.
Yeah.
So I gave my definition of Christian nationalism, which I think is necessarily exclusive of Jews. I think it's necessarily exclusive of Hindus. I think it's necessarily exclusive of Sikhs or atheists or whatever. And so you're right that it's a tribal voting bloc within the United States of America, but I'm not calling to end that tribal voting bloc. I'm arguing about that voting bloc getting so much power that they effectively institute a Christian theocracy that's against the liberal and libertarian project of the United States of America. That's what I'm advocating against.
I understand. I mean, broadly, I don't even think that your definition is too far off, that we can't just kind of go with it. The only thing that I would put out of it would be should, that there's some sort of ought statement that they must do that. I don't think that that is a proper part of Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism is just prioritizing Christianity and saying that Christianity has every bit as much right to rule as any other class does, based on its own virtues and ethics. And I think that that's a fine. I think that that's basically what you're trying to say here too, isn't it?
It relatively is, but then we kind of need to drag it down though, because so for instance, like when we're talking about Christianity, we probably have like, I don't know, 1,000 sects and interpretations, and we probably have sub-interpretation within sects.
Yeah, but you would have to say that about any political class. So MAGA has 1,000 different microsects in it. You could say that liberals have 1,000 different microsects, but it's the shared unification of value structures in which you're fighting for. So would you agree with me, for instance, that there's some unifications that Christians have, even if they have theological distinctions? For instance, almost all Christians would be against abortion. Almost all Christians would be against pornography. Almost all Christians would be against X, would be against Y, would be for X and for Y, though there would be deviation within, particular churches or particular agendas. They would have some sort of shared unification like you do on the progressive side. You don't agree with progressives about all sorts of things, but you agree enough with the things that they're talking about.
I was about to say, yeah. Part of the thing within your opening argument that might not be the same as most of the debates you take on this topic is I'm not a liberal maximist. I don't think liberty or freedom is like the sole virtue that we should be prioritized with. I do care about other things, and I do think those other things the state has a role in promoting.
Yeah, I understand, but you are still promoting the status quo. And that is
correct. But I wanted to ask you, so for instance, like abortion, Roe versus Wade was effectively legislated from the bench in like the 70s or something.
And it was overturned from the bench.
And it got overturned from the bench.
Yeah.
So that happened probably because a substantial amount of Christians, but also pro-life people in general, created a political coalition that got certain peoples in power that overturned it.
Yeah.
That all happened within the liberal framework. So my question is, because you kind of went on like, okay, yeah, there's going to be certain things that we all agree on, though, as Christians.
Well, that's not
besides
a liberal.
Abortion,
Wait
what
a second.
else do Christians believe needs to be instantiated in law?
Well, like I would say anti-porn laws. I would say that there would be decency laws. I would say that they would eliminate homosexual marriage, for instance. I think that they would get rid of that. There's all sorts of microcosms we could go into for things that they would be unified for. But I don't even think that you would disagree with that, would you?
There would be some things like so, for instance, like I'm a deist. I'm not a Christian, so I don't believe in Christ. I don't think he's the Messiah. I don't think that he's God instantiated, but I do think he's probably one of the most important prophets to ever walk the earth, with like moral teachings that every single human being should and could learn from. So when it comes to like prohibitions on homosexuality, we don't have to fall into that as like an argumentative trap, but like I wouldn't give two fucks about civil unions between a homosexual monogamous couple. I wouldn't give two shits about that.
I was on the wrong mic. Does that sound a lot better now?
It does sound better.
Okay, yeah, it does.
Yeah. Always for you, Mod, in the future, if it sounds like they're on the wrong mic, they probably fucking are. So
all right, yeah, I'll keep that in mind.
I don't necessarily know if we want to get into a debate about whether or not like homosexuality is natural, but it's just the point.
Well, I don't think that really matters. The proposition here that matters ultimately is a political proposition. What we're arguing about here is political paradigms. The political paradigm of the status quo versus the political paradigm of Christian nationalism and what Christian nationalism is and wants for the country, and if that's good. The thing is that whether or not it's true has no bearing really on anything ultimately, because whether or not there's any truth in the Constitution and the rights which you're given has no bearing. They're axiomatically correct to the people who hold them, and that's that. So we can see this, for instance, when we have the Declaration of Independence, we see these axioms come out, and what do they base the axioms on? God, right? These are axiomatic rights which are given to you. We believe that these are based on God. So without God, this God character, there is no axiom from which to ground rights. So we have to agree that that's a starting position. So if go ahead.
Real quick though, I don't. Yeah, let me hit that real quick. So I agree that rights are pretty much only as good as you can enforce them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, right to self-defense, limited government, and a constitution. That doesn't mean shit if you live in an authoritarian society. So it's only as true as we believe them to be true. However, I would say that we can observe the way that authoritarian societies operate. We can observe the way in which
they operate fine.
Societies operate.
They operate fine.
We can make a moral judgment on which one we prefer.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that you can make judgments based around preferences for societies you wish to live in. I'm not really so sure that this is not that the progressive status quo isn't particularly authoritarian. I think it is. And I think we just have to look back to COVID to note, if you're thinking about a fascist dystopia, what are the things you think of? They can come in and shut your business down whenever they want to. They can make you wear state mandated clothing, right? Which they did, called masks. They can make you have travel papers so that you can go to and from work, which they did, called COVID passports. And they can mandate things which you do with your body from external uses, like they did with vaccines. They can also shut down your church whenever they want for the interest of the public good. And the thing is like, that sounds way more like a fascist dystopia than fucking anything I've heard Christian nationalists propose, to be perfectly frank with you. On top of that, Connor, let's point this out. That's the fascist dystopia. Okay. We lived in it, and it was all promoted by the status quo leftists. And the thing that's really funny about this is like, what is it that Christian nationalists are really proposing that you're even against? The truth is that you guys wanted universal suffrage. The progressives wanted it in the worst way, and they've been fighting for it, and they're still fighting right this second and under the status quo to expand it. I've heard it even like 16-year-olds should be able to vote. That's a real thing. You see it in Western Europe already. It was passed in a couple of countries there, and that's coming here too. They want to expand it to people who have been disenfranchised because there were felons and all sorts of things, which should prohibit them from voting. If you give a stake to every human being, Connor, right, then what's going to end up happening is they're going to be able to vote out and vote in rights, meaning things that they prefer whenever they feel like it. Well, if your largest fucking voting bloc is Christians, which it is, then you're at the mercy of the thing you did, dude. You're at the mercy of that.
Yeah, of course. I've never been an advocate for direct democracy. That's we're realistically. I'm gonna. Work
that's not the status quo. Then
You gave me a lot, so I want to give some of it back. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm gonna work in reverse order. Okay. In my ideal world of worlds, I would actually make everybody take a citizenship test. I think you should have to pass that in
Starship Troopers, Connor.
Yes, unironically.
Yeah, okay.
And if I could,
was that a fascist government though, Connor?
Actually, technically, no.
Yes, it was. But anyway,
no, not. Are we talking about book or movie, man? Because if you want to talk about fascism, number one, I know Gentile pretty good. Number two, I know Starship Troopers pretty good.
Yeah, the whole critique was a critique on fascism. It just ended up sounding so cool when it was done.
Verhoeven doesn't know what Paul Verhoeven, the director of the movie, he doesn't know what fascism is. So
yeah, but in the books, it also looked very appealing, honestly.
Well, yeah, but the books were effectively, I hate to say this, but it was a minarchist society. The private society was like libertarian with a tax rate, and you could do whatever you want within the private society. But then the volunteer society was militarist, where you had to do a certain amount of service in order to gain the franchise.
And those were the ones who could vote.
Right. Listen, man, I know that compared to the Wignats, Chris Nats, dissident right-wing people, and Trump people, I'm to the left of you guys, but I'm telling you, I don't claim conservative arbitrarily. I don't claim conservatarian.
I understand. I guess getting to the meat of it, though, I'm not making the claim that you're some big leftist. I'm just saying, What is the actual proposition here that we're quibbling over for Christian nationalism if it's the case that we're enfranchised because progressives made us enfranchised and we can vote in or out whatever the fuck we want?
You asked me a question to that point that I want to answer. So you said, what are Christian nationalists advocating for that's more authoritarian than what people did during COVID? And to give you a full answer on that, COVID was largely a temporary measure. We don't have to wear the state mandated clothing anymore. We don't have to present our vaccine passports. We don't have to, we don't have limited travel when it comes to travel. All of that stuff was temporary. And by the way, 1.1 million excess deaths did occur between 21 and 22. We don't have to get into the details, but if that's a fatality rate effectively of like 0.3% of the United States population, even with all the restrictions. If we had the fatality of, let's say, Ebola, then I'm pretty sure that we would be having an entirely different conversation where we might even argue that those steps weren't far enough if it was similarly violent to Ebola. So for me, like measures from the government during an emergency are not necessarily fascist.
Yeah, but do you see how that makes my point for me? That the point is that based around joint preference, we can easily restrict behaviors in society that we don't find preferable because society, because society suffers because of it. And so that's
just true of society in general.
Well, the thing is, though, Connor, is that if that's the case when it comes to universal suffrage and that's a demand which is made, you can't then get upset because one of the voting blocks happens to be the largest is fucking Christian and they're going to push their agenda through. You fuckers did it to yourselves. So I don't know how you reconcile that position.
Because there's two games, okay? Because I do not presume that you are a Christian nationalist who wants to take secularists, liberals, Jews, atheists, Creaster Christians, moderate Christians. You probably don't want them to create a tribal group that beats you at the state game. You want to win. You want to win. You want to impose a Christian nationalist
I want
society.
Power, yes, for Christians.
And what I'm trying to argue is that you should not want to destroy the entire game of constitutionalism, republicanism,
but this is
capitalism.
But Connor, this is a counterintuitive point. So you can't make. I'll show you. You can't make the point. Think about how circular this is. Everybody should be enfranchised, but we know if everybody's enfranchised that they're going to create interest blocks. When they create interest blocks, the only way that you can actually have power is through joint interest blocks. You yourself as a voter have no fucking power at all. You as a collective voter have a lot of fucking power. Okay.
Right.
Hang on a second. Let me just finish the circularity of the argument. If that's the case, when you say, well, Christians are forming this fucking block in order to maintain power before somebody fucking else forms a block and maintains power, then I don't know what you're arguing. Of course we're going to do that. If we don't do that, Connor, then fucking Marxists will do it. Leftists will do it. People like this will do it. And they don't have our best fucking interest in mind, dude. So what choice do we have but to form a block and pass our agenda now when we fucking can do it? What choice?
Okay. So what I would say is I also hate leftists and probably hate them for the same reason. I also hate fascists. I also hate them for the same reason. And when it comes to Christian nationalists, if you're just talking about a political alignment of people of shared values who advocate within the republic for their own legislation, that's all we've ever been doing for 250 years.
No, it's
that's
more.
All we've been doing for 250
You're missing
years.
a point. You're missing a critical point.
No, I'm not missing the point. And by the way, I'm sorry, you just keep interrupting me, so I want to continue for a little bit.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. You're saying that, oh, well, we create special interest groups that then advocate for policy. That's just been true. That's just been fucking true.
Well, it hasn't been true.
How is this any different?
It wasn't true
in the 19th century or the early 20th century or the middle 20th century or the late 20th century.
It wasn't true the two-party system is an emergence which happened from universal suffrage. There was no two-party system before that. Okay, that's an emergent property of universal suffrage. Because why?
The two parties are made up of a series of special interest groups who have aligned into the two-party system.
But let me explain why that is the case. It's the case because of a consolidation of power. The idea here is if we're going to have voting blocks, then we want to have power, right? And the only way to have power is in numbers. So if you have one that's adverse to the other, we have a block that's large enough that we can actually maintain some sort of power. The problem that comes in here is if Christians don't have authority and power, and they're able to maintain authority and power by changing the Constitution to suit them so that they're not out of power, then Marxists and others will come in, and when they have power, change the rules so that they never lose it. So the question here is, we're all running for the finish line here. The question is, who gets there first? Is it going to be? Hang on, is it going to be Christians?
Outnumber all of the groups that you're talking about by a factor of 10.
I don't think that that's correct. And let me give you a demonstration for why I don't think that that's correct. I think that what you see is coalitions now forming based around the idea of not just ethnos. Now, you remember when ethnos was the thing that coalitions were trying to kind of bring up. Now, the reason that was a terrible plan is because if you just base it on ethnos, you don't have the numbers inside the United States, and you haven't for a long time. Maybe you could have pulled that off, when it was 95% white, 70 years ago, 80 years ago, something like that. But that's no longer the case. Whites are 60%, and white women vote against white men anyway, unless they're married. So now the coalition is generally under religion or some other political faculty, but religion takes the priority because it's still a shared value. So me and Hispanic people have this shared value. Me and Chinese people have this shared value. We all have this shared value. Because of that, that does create and form a very powerful voting bloc. If we get in and we don't change it so that we don't have mass migration and so that we can't keep Christianity as the most powerful voting bloc, other voting blocks will form under Marxism.
Okay, but
they will form under Marxism, and they will do it.
Okay, but here's a contradiction, and also I want to know your definition of Marxism in a second. So, number one, I would say that the contradiction in what you just said is that 90 to 99% of the mass immigration coming to the United States is from South and Central America. They are infinitely more Christian and infinitely more socially conservative than Americans are. Now, moving to the economics, you're saying, oh, well, they're, maybe they're more economically redistributive. Well, I would say that Christian nationalists as a bloc, with you being representative of maybe the Ortho sect and Nick Fuentes being representative of the Tradcaths or whatever, the Tradcaths are infinitely more interested in redistributive economics. And so when you say Marxism, what do you mean? Because I don't see Donald Trump, who was picked as the guy who could be the vanguard for the far right wing. He's currently embracing Mamdani, and they both got into power through economic populism. So how is Christian nationalism going to guard against, number one, economic populism? Number two, how are you defining Marxism?
Well, first, the economic populism of New York, not of the nation. That's one. But let's dive into this so that there's a couple of different points to address. Marxism is the movement towards the people having control of ownership, right? All private ownership being abolished. That's what Marxism is. If you're talking about socialism, that's the idea that the state has control over all private ownership. Okay, now we've never been able to get from socialism to real Marxism. It's always stopped at the socialism level. But in order for the state to hold all private equity and private ownership, which is what they want to do, Marxists want to do ultimately, they need to have power in order to control the state. That's what they have to have. So they are going to do this, Connor, whether you like it or not. They've done it and done it and done it and done it and done it. And they're doing it right now in New York. They're trying. I mean, that's what fucking Marxists do. When you're talking about importing people from South America, you still also have to have other shared cultural values. And it is true that by the second or third generation, they begin to have those, which is why they're starting to break for the right instead of the left. But the left doesn't want to just flood us with South Americans anymore. They're looking elsewhere. And so the thing is like, look, ultimately, there is a shared voting bloc here. And the shared voting bloc is Christian values and Christian ethics. And if it's the case that we can control power so that we can keep other people out, and our voting bloc is assured to be in the power position for the social order of society, that's good, because otherwise some fucking buddy else will. Now, even if you disagree with me on mass migration, or you disagree with me on immigration policy, or you disagree with me on economics or things like that, you're not going to be able to disagree with me on power distribution. Marxists fucking
No,
want it.
I don't.
Yeah, Marxists, hang on, man. Marxists want it, progressives want it, leftists want it. They all want it. And by the way, when they fucking get it, they're going to try to maintain it. And if that means that they got to change laws to do it, they'll fucking do that too. So it's a race to the finish line. And man, I really want us to fucking win.
Okay. I appreciate what you said. But what I would say is liberals and libertarians and Republicans, by the way, people who believe in a republic, people who believe in the Constitution,
don't have a republic,
and ordered law and ordered
there is
liberty.
no republic.
I just listened for a few minutes, so I'd like an opportunity to speak,
go ahead.
please.
Yeah, that's fair.
So people who actually believe in the Republic of the United States, for which it stands, and all the shit that we get taught as children, they want to perpetuate the game as we currently have it, which means keeping the First Amendment, which is freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, the Second Amendment, which is the right to keep and bear arms up to and including against a tyrannical government. It's shit like the Fourth, Fifth, and Eighth Amendment and the 14th Amendment, which are basically due process laws. And so they want to keep all of that shit. So when you're talking about, and I would say a majority of the population, you have to bear in mind a third of the population votes left, a third of the population votes right, and a third of the country doesn't vote at all. And also, even within the Christian bloc, which you keep mentioning is the largest demographic within the United States, let's be real, 30 to 35% of the country is secular or atheist, meaning that they actually don't believe in God at all. And then the 70% of the Christians, probably, let's say half of them to probably 80% of them are Creaster Christians. And what I mean by that is they don't take their faith seriously. They don't think about God. They don't think about Jesus. They don't think about heaven. They don't think about divinity. They just go on Easter and Christmas. And so what I'm saying is I have no resentments towards you trying to build a Christian political advocacy bloc. What I'm saying is that civic nationalism covers all of those people. And civic nationalism only involves the proposition that you believe in the Constitution of the United States. It's a far lower bar to entry.
Yeah. So again, these things are contradictory in their own right. First, we don't have I'll tell you. First, we don't have a republic. A republic, if you have everybody enfranchised, that's no longer a republic. Okay,
we vote for representatives.
Yeah, but we never were supposed to.
No. Hold on.
We never were supposed to. Ever.
Excuse me, but black men getting the vote, I'm just going to see as a moral good. Women getting the vote, we could argue about. I don't really care. But the point is that, like, we still choose representatives. The average citizen does not write legislation.
And were we supposed to ever select representatives, Connor?
Yeah.
No.
Wait.
No.
We started as a representative republic. What the fuck are you talking about?
Listen to me. Maybe you just have no idea. How do you think the president used to get elected? Do you think that the people got to vote on him?
No.
Exactly. No.
Right. Who
the
people
didn't get to vote.
By?
The people didn't get to vote on anything except their state reps. The state reps were the ones who then sent the federal reps up. And only certain people inside of the states were able to vote at all. And most of the requirements were that they were Christians because what? You had to be of good moral standing. They didn't want people. I don't think
you contradicted me at all.
Hang on. They didn't want people who were in bad moral standing. The second
so,
you
I'm
claim.
Sorry, who picked the president in the 19th century?
I didn't interrupt you. I let you go. Can I finish?
Absolutely.
So the thing is, man, is that the big problem that you have, the contradictory nature of what it is that you're stating is you start first with a presupposition, which is false, that we still have a republic. We don't. We now are moving towards direct democracy. And that's probably what we're going to see in our lifetime or something more akin to it. That's the ever expansive flow is towards that, not a republic. When you're talking about checks and balances and things like this has been out the door for a long time because now the public can vote directly on issues. And so they can be bribed. The whole system's fucking done. The republic has already fallen. That's not even here anymore. The original statement of our founders for what a republic was, which was based on a compromise due to the fact we had the Articles of Confederation, and that was a fucking mess. It was a mess. We couldn't govern anything. Okay. The republic is dead. I don't know where you've been. Now it's a Zurich rush to power based on the enfranchisement of people. And now that people have realized that you can collectivize through enfranchisement to seize power, it's a matter of who gets there first and who's willing to change the laws when they are there, Connor. And the thing is that if we don't do it, they're going to fucking do it to us. So I don't even understand the proposition that you're giving here. You already know that that's true. You know, if Christians don't rush to do it, others will. And by the way, when you talk about secularists here, A lot of secularists are voting the way that Christians vote now because they're sick of social morbid degeneracy and still see Christian ethics as being superior to the alternative of progressive degeneracy. So again and again and again, telling me that we can't have a voting bloc when we've already had tons of successful elections based on the emergent political party of Christian nationalism or Christian populism, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, because we seem like we're kicking the shit out of everybody, Connor.
Okay. I'm going to try to be very specific because I'm not sure if you heard me before, so I'm going to say it again. I don't care that Christian conservatives with aligned values vote in their conscience. I don't give two shits about that.
What about them changing
and
stuff?
I actually wouldn't even care, real quick. Yeah. I wouldn't even care if they got a healthy chunk of what they wanted. I'm a dude. I don't need an abortion. Okay. I'm not black. Maybe, whatever you want to do with black folk. Not you, but Nick or whatever, right? Like, I don't, this isn't skin off of my ass. What I'm saying is that the liberal, libertarian, Republican project that the United States is not dead. And I don't concede that. And I don't agree with you. We vote for representatives. There is not a single person in the state of Florida who has ever crafted a piece of legislation that has gone through either house of Congress. It hasn't happened except for the elected representatives.
No, that's not true.
Wrong. The only thing that the only thing that we voted on in the state of Florida is we voted on state level memorandums that had to reach a certain threshold to even be considered by the state. I'm sorry. What piece of federal legislation have I been capable of voting on in the past?
Well, no, it's
years?
It's not the capability of voting, but drafting.
Well, then it's not direct democracy. What the fuck are you talking about?
Private citizens are actually the ones who draft almost all federal legislation, who are part of think tanks. Those think tanks then bribe the electorate, and they pass through NGOs to the representatives things in which to vote on. So the thing is,
a republic works. Do you think a representative crafts everything from scratch?
Well, I mean, originally I do think that they had assistance, but generally this were from property owners or stakeholders. Stakeholders had a lot more to lose inside of the republic than the average citizen does. The average citizen.
The chief complaints
hang on,
from the left,
bro. Can you let me finish the point?
Absolutely.
It is the case that if you have a perpetual underclass that you want to appeal to, even though all of the things have been taken care of for them, food, hunger, water, basic needs, they're basically a thing of the past, at least here in the United States. It's true that people have economic hard times, but the idea that we just have people fucking starving everywhere or can't get access to clean water is fucking insane. We've defeated most of these problems by and large. What happens, though, is that there's a consistent appeal to the underclass. As people get richer, the people on the bottom end of the get rich, they're appealed to by another form of the electorate to say, hey, these guys over here are really fucking you. So you need a form of block so that you can pull their resources down. Now, that was never the intention of the republic. Now the electorate can be bribed. And because the electorate can be bribed and they can vote their own bribe money to themselves, okay, the republic is fallen. It is fucked. It is crushed. There is no safeguard from this. None. And so now it's just a rush to power, bro. That's it.
I mean, I think you're just describing societies, but
that's not how societies are supposed to work. You're not supposed to be able to form a voting block to vote yourself other people's money. That's fucking crazy.
So you think in medieval Europe, you've appealed to history and you've said that my analysis is ahistorical, which I don't agree with. But you think that in medieval history, it wasn't like interest blocks forming power blocks that then advocated to the top level in order to get to the. You don't think feudal lords were who made power, like power plays in medieval Europe?
Well, that's a different proposition.
What the fuck are you talking about?
But let me explain. In the feudal system, and you can find this in both Japan and Europe because they followed a similar type of feudalism. It wasn't quite a caste system, but it was a nobility class versus a non-nobility class. The nobles had all the stake. Knights held the land, or samurais held the land. The knights of, Japan, they were reporting to daimyos, who were family leaders. Okay, in this case, they were reporting to either jarls or viscounts or whatever, depending on where you were in Europe. They were the ones who were collecting the duties on the land, and that would get sent over to the king or to a prince or to some other middle manager all the way up. The truth is that only those people were allowed to have a say because they were the only people who had a stake. The peasants were living at their behest.
You did not refute that there were power blocks. All you did was describe them. That's all you did.
The peasants couldn't vote themselves the knight's money, dude.
Yeah, but the
Do you
peasants had to
understand the
remain
difference?
industrious in order for their lords to have the ties
But
and
it
the
was
men at
completely
arms
at
and
the
the
behest
knights
of the
and all that kind of
lords.
stuff in
It was
order to be
totally at the
politically
behest of the
relevant. You're
lords.
basically acting like politics was invented in the 20th
No,
century.
I'm just
That's
telling.
not
I'm trying
true.
to explain to you how power blocks
You don't need to
inside
explain
of
it. I understand a lot of
enfranchisement work.
things.
I get
I'm
it,
being polite because I like it when you
but
yap, but you didn't need
enfranchisements.
to explain those things.
Yeah, but Connor, I think I do, because when you're talking about
You don't.
enfranchising a peasant class, would medieval Europe have worked if peasants could vote themselves the fucking knight's land? No,
Probably not.
no, and this fucking republic isn't going to work because that's what they're doing. They're
Okay,
doing the
hold
same
on.
thing.
Number one. Okay, I don't agree with you descriptively at all, so I'll just go into that. So the chief complaint from the left, by the way, not necessarily me, is that the current legislative system is captured by billionaires, energy companies, military industrial complex folks, tech bros, and that they're the ones that are crafting the legislation via think tanks that then go in front of legislators to be rubber stamped and issued into Congress. That is the technocratic elite. Those are the people who make hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. If you're saying that the American Republic has fallen because we're letting the swarthy plebeian masses make their voices known too hard, the complaint is the opposite, that we're almost being exclusively run by elites.
No, what's going on is that those think tanks and those NGOs and those technocrats and those billionaires, what they do is they craft mass propaganda campaigns in order to get carefully selected politicians who are in their pocket elected by bribing certain parts of the electorate. This is why you see the propaganda coming out of the think tanks on the left for things like DEI, for things like reparations, for things like this. These are all bribes to the electorate in order to get specific politicians to get elected, who will then pass whatever their non-governmental organization, NGO, or think tank has set up for us. This
You
only,
understand that in
this
developed
only,
countries, Americans are uniquely bad at
This is
bribing the
only-
peasant class, right?
No, they're really good at it, actually. That's one of the
I
big
think they're pretty
falsehoods.
bad.
That's one of the big falsehoods of the left. These last riots, for instance, that happened in California, the No King's Day was not organic at all. It was grafted by 500 to 1,000 specific NGOs, and I read a list of them. And what they did was they began paying the peasant class to show up to these things, which they often do. And they were trying to propagandize portions of the electorate against Donald Trump because he's some type of thorn against their agenda. So they were saying he's a fascist, he's a this, he's a that. It's crazy.
How is that, real quick, how is that different from what you or I do?
What do you mean?
Because I wake up every single day, I go onto a live stream, I have a certain ideological set, and I get financially rewarded as an ideological set by my chat. And as a result, I advocate for a certain set of beliefs that I'm trying to convince a maximum amount of people to believe in. So how are these people, because you're using scary words like NGO and propaganda,
your goal is to use the electorate for power.
How are they different than you
me? Well, first of all, I'm not I guess both of us would be non-governmental organizations, but we're not think tanks. The thing is, though, is that I'm a tank and
I like to think.
Yeah, all you're doing is affirming my point. The idea here is that we're trying to mobilize the electorate to put them in position, or put people in positions of power who reflect our belief structures on the country, knowing that if we don't get our people there, somebody else is going to get their people there.
Okay, but hold on, real quick, right here. I think this is the argument right here. Okay. Donald Trump did specific things that are contrary to the Republic of the United States. And what I would cite specifically is the fake elector scheme by John Eastman, where he tried to say that the vice president's role is not ceremonial, and that because there's alleged fraud in XYZ ABC states, then Meg Pence can declare that because of this fraud, these ballots are cast out, therefore Donald Trump is the president. So then they had like another backup plan. Then they had a backup plan to the backup plan. Then they had the protest.
I'm just going to grant all of it's true. So what?
Okay. All of that shit is, people are getting called seditious for saying that the military should follow legal orders and not unlawful orders right now. All of that shit was illegal as fuck and treasonous as fuck.
I'm going to tell you a truth of the world. The only thing that's fucking illegal is what the guy with the fucking gun tells you is illegal. And ultimately,
so you don't believe in a constitution anymore. This is exactly what I'm advocating against.
Well, okay, but hang on, calm down, right? The truth is that even if I granted all of this, if it is the case that power is seized in this nation by Marxists at the barrel of the gun, or it's seized by somebody else at the barrel of the gun. The truth of the matter is that that's how power works. Now, do I agree
There's
that
not enough Marxists to seize the power of the United States. There's
you know
not
what?
enough Marxists in the
I'm
United
going to
States
tell
to
you,
overthrow the Republic.
yeah, well, you know what? That's exactly what the fucking czar thought too, because they thought they were all fucking nerd buckets. They thought all the Leninists were a bunch of fucking dorks and nerd buckets, and the White Russians had all the power, and they were the Omega Chads, and they never saw it coming. When they fucking got overthrown, his whole family got drug out and shot in the fucking head. Nobody saw it coming, Connor. None of them saw it coming.
All saw it coming for a prolonged period. I don't think that's accurate.
You're
to late
wrong.
Russian
You need
history.
to look at what happened with the White Russians and the White Russian Party. They thought they were fucking dorks. They thought they were nerds. They didn't expect it. They didn't expect it at all. And then suddenly there was a clique through.
Talking about like
chill out, Connor. Let me finish my point.
Like 200 to 300 years
let me finish my point.
The rest of Europe.
Connor, just let me finish my point. They seized power from the rightful power that was there, the czar. They did it. A bunch of fucking dorks. Okay. A bunch of Weasley, a bunch of Weasley dorks. If you need
to seize power first, then why isn't January 6th super fucking based? Is it not based because
what do you mean? What does that have to do with anything that we're talking about?
Because you're.
I'm talking about the mechanisms of power in a philosophical way, not the event itself. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. I'm talking about power.
Okay, hold on. Absolutely. Whether or not we continue to propagate the peaceful transfer of power in a republic absolutely matters.
We don't have a republic, and there's no peaceful transfers of power anymore. I don't know what you're talking about. What peaceful transfers of power are you talking about? Donald Trump gets elected and they go to California and they start fucking destroying vehicles and burning the fucking town down and starting fucking little small riots everywhere. They go to the ICE facilities of the federal agents and do everything they can fucking do to get them shot or killed or shoot and kill them themselves. This is not a peaceful transfer of power. What are you talking about?
I really, really, really don't like internet politics, by the way. If you look at any time throughout history, you could pick any time in the 19th century, this is more peaceful than the 19th century. You could pick any time in the 20th century, the current era is more peaceful than that time. You could look at a whole host of political intrigues that are infinitely more fucked up, except for Donald Trump.
Well, then can you tell me why it is that Destiny's running around saying that there has been more protest under this president than any other president in U.S. history?
Protests aren't violence. What the fuck
yeah, they do lead to violence. These ones have nonstop. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the fact that the homicide rate has been cut in half since 1992, and half of you fucks aren't even aware of that.
Do you remember what happened with the BLM riots? Do you remember what happened with the unrest going on?
Of damage. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then by the way, smoked 3 dudes and everybody got bored. What the fuck are you talking about?
Again and again and again. When you're saying that there are now peaceful transfers of power, here's what's happening is mass polarization. The left is not ever.
The 60s and 70s were infinitely more statistically violent than this right now.
Yeah, the thing is, that's really funny, Connor, is that the left right now is never going to accept a right-wing politician, and the right wing is not ever going to accept a left-wing politician. That's where we're at. We don't accept them, and so we don't accept their authority. We don't like their authority. We resist their authority. That's what's been going on for the last 20 years.
Bet $50? I could do like 50 or 20.
On what?
On whether or not the left wing broadly or the right wing broadly will accept a president of the United States from the opposite party.
They don't see his authority as being something that needs to be followed. They see it as authority which needs to be resisted. At every level, they see it as authority which needs to be resisted, Connor. They see it from, I mean, you can go to TikTok and listen to these people.
And via the courts, that's not a problem. That's the way our political system works.
It is a fucking problem. Yes, it is. Because once people decide that there's a whole voting cast of or group of people who put others in authority and their authority is not recognized, we've got a big fucking problem. And their authority is not being recognized.
Okay, 6 Democrats said the other day that if the president disobeys the law and orders them to do something unlawful, then it is their job to refuse the order. This has been labeled largely on social media as a seditious action. Have we seen the United States military rise up and seize Washington, D.C.? Have we seen a rebellion that's deposed Donald Trump? Or is
what does that have to do with what I'm saying?
Speaking, following his orders as long as they think they're approximately legal?
Yeah, well, I'm talking about erosion, right? You're talking about a specific event. The thing is that the erosion is happening because neither side concede the authority of the other side. In other words, Donald Trump's not my president is what you'll hear from a leftist a lot more than he is my president. They'll agree that he was elected. They won't agree that his authority is something that they need to actually adhere to. And the problem is that this is
the point of illegality or to the point of protest?
Not just to the point of protest. These people will go in, agitate, burn things, destroy things, and then have bail funds ready for themselves. And have powers.
They incarcerated?
They have powers and mechanisms in place and they're going to expand this. This is not contracting. This guy's going to be there for many more years, and the polarization is going to continue. So what happens right now is here's what every side sees from the bird's eye view, right? It's a rush to who gets power and who gets to fucking change the laws to stay in power. That's what every side. Hang on, Connor. Just let me finish, bro.
What's actually happening,
bro? No, it is what's happening. You're just fucking blind.
No, it's not. I'll be happy to describe it whenever you're done.
All right, go ahead, Connor. Tell me what's really happening.
Okay. Donald Trump has not been able to pass legislation. He has not, besides the big, beautiful bill, he's not been able to pass shit, which means that the only thing that he's done is executive orders, which means the next time that a Democrat gets back in there, the same way that he reversed DACA, the same way that he reversed Remain in Mexico, the same way that he reversed all these things, a Democrat is going to be able to reverse all those same things because they weren't passed via legislation. So no, and by the way, this is all perfectly legal because what he's doing is he's doing random things using the executive branch, and people think they're testing the limits of the authority that's invested in his seat, and they're challenging him in court. That's the way the system is supposed to work. If some dickhead for $20 said, you don't understand force doctrine, I understand force doctrine more than you, dickhead. The society only works, number one, as long as we believe in it, and number two, as long as people are forced or compelled to do it. So no, I understand that completely, but pretending that we're in this fallen direct democracy anarchic shithole on the verge of civil war is fucking cope. It's just absolute. Statistically, it's cope.
That's also what's real cope is when you straw man a position. I didn't say any of those things. Here's what I've said, and I'll be very clear.
I feel like you painted that picture pretty vividly.
You're focusing. What we're focusing on right now is erosion, societal erosion.
Well, and you also said that we don't live in a republic anymore. I
don't think we do. Not at least the way our founders intended it. Not at all. And I think that enfranchisement destroyed a lot of that. And so the thing is that, and we can pull up the original way that people were supposed to vote to notate this. But let's point this out. You're dealing right now with social erosion. And what happens with social erosion? Right now, you're dealing with old school boomers and shit who are still in office. They're dying off, Connor. The old guard's dying off. There is not going to be the Nancy Pelosi's and the kind of this old guard status quo anymore. It's leaving. Instead, you're getting communists who are getting elected in New York. You're getting something different now. Okay. And this different thing that you see is a maxim of polarization. That there is no more room for the center. And the reason for that is because either they get power or we get power is now how we're looking and viewing politics at the national stage. You're talking about systems and mechanics which are in place to assist against this, but they're being eroded, whether you like them or not. And if it's the case that the left can change these laws and Marxists can change laws and amend laws, if they could get an abortion amendment through tomorrow, they would. If they could get an amendment for no more guns tomorrow, they fucking would. If they could amend the Constitution to suit them, they will do it. And so, yes, they can. The problem is, it's like you're fucking wrong. They can. Yes, they can.
You think they can eliminate the Second Amendment or the First Amendment?
I think it's very possible that you could have a constitutional convention in our lifetimes where you could have some of these amendments which are being viewed. Yes, I think that that's a full possibility. We've been talking about having another constitutional convention for years. It would not surprise me if the polarization got so bad that other states decided that they wanted to move towards a constitutional convention. It could happen. But this aside, the fun thing about this, though, is let's just say it doesn't. Let's just say it doesn't. Let's just say that what happens instead is social populism happens this way. Let's say that there's a bunch of leftists who get together and they're like, look, people hate this mass migration shit. They go ahead and elect into office tons and tons and tons of social fucking progressives who are against mass migration, but want their economic policies passed. Okay. Let's just say that that's extremely popular with the electorate. If it becomes very popular with the electorate, yes, they probably can begin to unwind some of these amendments, which would help them with power in the future, Connor, because they've been doing it now. The whole point of enfranchisement was to secure power. That's what it was for.